Hello my lovely friends, it's Yulia here from EASTCOTT and BURGESS tea. Today I'll talk about the 6 main types of tea, how each type of tea is made, and why it is that the same tea leaf results in such different types of tea, such different flavors, colors and scents. This video builds upon my last video which talked about oxidation, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'd strongly recommend you go and check it out. The link to it is down below this video, so make sure that this video makes more sense. Let's begin. Firstly, in order to group the thousands of teas there are in the world, we need to establish how the different teas differ. The first way in which different teas differ is tea varieties. Now, I'm an environmental scientist and not a botanist, so I won't go crazy in detail here, but basically all tea comes from one plant, and that is Camellia sinensis. Teas made from species of plants other than Camellia sinensis aren't technically teas, they're tisanes. Camellia sinensis can then be divided into 4 main varieties: Sinensis, Assamica, Pubilimba and Dihangensis. The 2 main varieties used for the production of tea are Sinensis, which has origins in China, and Assamica, which has origins in India. These varieties then split into thousands of sub-varieties called cultivars. Cultivars are tea plants made by the careful breeding and selection of Camellia sinensis. This is often done to create a tea plant that is more ideal for the growing conditions of an area and its terroir, so its climate, altitude and soil. We have just established that the tea plant, Camellia sinensis, can be divided into 4 main varieties and then into cultivars. So could this be the answer for why the different types of tea are different? Because they are all created from different varieties and cultivars? It is not. In theory, any of these varieties and cultivars can be made into any of the 6 main types of tea. So in theory, any of these varieties and cultivars can be simultaneously made into a green tea and a black tea. So what is it that gives rise to the different types of tea? The answer is tea processing. So the types of tea differ by processing and their level of oxidation. This is perhaps the most important reason why the same tea leaf can result in such different types of tea, so let me explain this in more detail. Let's start with white tea. I won't go into detail here on how the different types of tea are produced, but white tea is the least processed of all teas because traditionally it is produced just by drying in the sun for 2-3 days. Sun drying is equivalent to heating the leaves at a very low temperature. As seen from my previous video on oxidation, scientific studies have shown that a low temperature won't completely remove oxidation, but it will reduce it. This basically means that a white tea is a tea that has been sun-dried and is thus slightly oxidized. Just a fun fact for you guys here, this is why white teas such as white peony tea might have different colors in their leaves, ranging from green to brown, because of their uneven levels and different levels of oxidation produced by the sun. The next type of tea we'll look at is green tea. How does a white tea differ to a green tea? In contrast to white teas, green teas are typically weathered only for a short period of time under the sun. They are then heated under relatively high temperatures to slow down oxidation. The Chinese typically pan-fry their green teas, whilst the Japanese typically steam them. As the scientific studies that I've looked at in my previous video show, this heating the teas at a higher temperature than white teas will result in lower levels of oxidation in green teas compared to white teas. The next type of tea we'll look at is oolong teas, or oolong teas as they're sometimes pronounced. Whilst white and green teas are typically considered to be relatively unoxidized teas, oolong teas are semi-oxidized. Adagio teas have measured the oxidation levels in oolong teas and have established that it generally ranges between 8 and 80%. So how do we get an oolong tea from the Camellia sinensis as opposed to a white or a green tea? With oolong teas, the leaves are first shaken, then gently rolled, then allowed to rest and oxidize for a while. This rolling of the leaf and then leaving the leaf to oxidize is repeated a number of times with oolongs. Basically, the rolling and the shaking of the leaves kickstarts oxidation. Over the course of many hours and sometimes days even, what is created is a beautiful layering of aroma and flavor. There are 2 types of oolongs depending on their levels of oxidation. There are light oolongs, which are slightly oxidized, and there are dark oolongs, which are more oxidized. After the desired level level of oxidation is reached, the oolongs are then heated to prevent further oxidation from happening. Traditionally, generally they might be pan-roasted or baked, for example. The next type of tea we'll have a look at are called black teas in the West, or in the East they call them red teas. So what determines whether we get a black tea as opposed to an oolong or a white or a green tea? Well, the production of black teas also involves withering, rolling and then leaving it to oxidize, but black teas are allowed to oxidize more completely than oolong teas. Also, the steps are followed in a more linear fashion, as in they are generally not repeated on a single batch. After this, the leaves are typically baked or roasted to prevent further oxidation from happening and to dry the leaves. So far we've learned that based on their levels of oxidation, 4 types of tea can be produced: white tea, green tea, black tea and oolong tea. But additionally, 2 more types of tea can be created based on how they are processed after the oxidation process is complete. Firstly, when a green tea or a black tea is then further fermented, this can result in a fermented tea, such as dark tea or a pu'er tea, for example. This is done by allowing microorganisms to grow on the leaves, which changes the chemistry of the leaf. Secondly, a green tea can then be turned into a yellow tea using a process called menghuang. Translating, menghuang means sealed yellowing. During menghuang, small portions of the tea leaves are wrapped into bundles using paper or cloth. Whilst wrapped, the leaves slowly change color from green to yellow-green. This happens because chlorophylls in the tea leaves are broken down. This allows for the vegetal flavors in the tea leaves to begin to mellow and for the tea leaves to partially oxidize. Okay, so I've now listed the 6 main types of tea and outlined how they're different in terms of their production process. But any of these 6 types of tea can then be processed further one last time. Such further processing includes flavoring, scenting, grinding, aging or decaffeinating the tea, or combining it with flowers to make flowering tea. Flowering tea is where tea leaves unfold in a cup to reveal a beautiful flower in the center. Okay, so I realize that we've now covered lots of information here. In my future videos, I'll begin looking at these different types of tea in more detail, so stay tuned. Also, for a guide on how to brew the different types of tea, check out the EASTCOTT and BURGESS website. I will post a link to it down below this video, and also my video here. Sasha and I are going to China very soon to source the next harvest of teas, so I'd love to know what you think of our current teas to help us with the sourcing. Alright, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, hit the like button below, hit the bell button, share it with your friends and be sure to subscribe. Delicious with Yulia is signing off, and I'll see you again next week, guys. Ciao!